Hello and welcome back to the newest episode of the Time podcast. Today I am extraordinarily excited because I do not only have a guest, but a support person, as they say, right? Today we have the first time our new co-host with me, which is Arnaud. Welcome to the studio, Arnaud. Again, I should say, this time though on the producing side, not on the guest side.
Yes, on a very highly skilled producing side, right? Wink, wink.
You're just saying that to make me flush. So the main reason Arnaud is joining us is obviously that, in addition to the very harsh German accent, we have a very soft French accent as well.
Yes, soft.
Plus, it trains people who are listening on all different kind of accents. So there's a learning and development opportunity, which gives you a personal, very good transition to your topic now. Arnaud, over to you. Would you mind introducing our guest?
Yes, our guest today is Mylinda Joyce. She's the Learning and Development Manager at the Travel Corporation Oceania. And we're very excited to talk to her because I think it's a very important episode that we're going to have today.
100%. Hello, Mylinda. Nice to see you in the studio.
Hi, good afternoon to both of you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely pleasure. And I've learned so much about you already. And I'm not telling people that you've done the Russian opera before right now.
Yes.
We come back to that a little bit later. That's probably one of the fun facts I love to hear from you. But let's talk travel a little bit first. So you just joined the travel industry probably about 14, 15 months ago, if I do remember right. Just seeing from when you started to today, what kind of trend or what kind of direction have you observed?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I, at the Travel Corporation, this is my first foray into the industry. So I've worked in learning and development for lots of other industries, but this was my first sort of dipping the toe into travel and tourism. So it began, and I remember it based on some milestones. I began literally about a week before the Australian borders reopened here. So we had the peace of mind here at the Travel Corporation to say, okay, we know that things are about to get big again. You know, people are going to start traveling again. So we're going to need to grow again, which means we're going to need to bring people along with their capabilities as well. So I remember sitting in the office of our CEO, David Hosking, and on day one, and him saying, okay, right, well, the borders are about to open and things are about to get real. So it's been really interesting for me that, yes, it's only been 14 months so far, but from a period where I began, which was this sort of anticipation of coming out of this holding pattern to this exponential growth in terms of the people that we need, and then trying to upskill people and trying to entice people back to the industry, trying to entice people back, but entice new people to the industry. So some of the really interesting trends that I've kind of seen from sitting in the learning and development seat, which obviously is part of the wider people and culture function, has been around all of a sudden we have this skill shortage, right? We need to get incredible people, and we want to entice those incredible people back that perhaps couldn't be with us during COVID. And so we need to be more open to flexibility. We need to be more open to remote workers. And what does that mean then for remote training and for remote engagement and for remote onboarding? So in the 14 months that I've been here, I've seen, I don't know if I would call it a trend, but at least an awakening of, we can't do things the way we always used to do it. And we need to reach out to people on an individual level to say, what is going to work for you to be able to bring you back in and to be able to get you into a place where you're being as productive and as engaged and as satisfied with your work as you can be. So it's been, for us, it's been a matter of, consultation, I guess, of with our employee base as it's growing and growing and growing. And I know the whole industry is screaming for people and screaming for quality people, of actually really consulting with employees to say, well, how do we get the best out of you, and how do we help you have the most satisfying connection to this organization? So it's been a period of shift and a period of change. And I don't think I'd be lying if I said we've landed on a magic formula and we've got it all right and we know exactly what we're doing for this new world.
I was going to ask you what was the magic formula, then we can share with everyone else listening to the podcast now. because it's very interesting what you're saying. Basically, I think that all of us in travel, we've been facing with exactly the same challenges as you, but obviously at different scales, right? And so I just wanted to see if you could share with us like maybe 2 or 3 findings, based on your experience. I mean, obviously you talked about consultation, but do you think there's anything else that would be like the start of a magic recipe to try to encourage people to come back to the industry, first of all, because we know we've lost a lot of them with a lot of high skills, but also to attract new people in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, apologies, I can't provide you with a fully fledged formula.
It's okay.
So disappointing.
Yeah,
So
I think
disappointing.
I know, right? I
Your
think
Russian ballet
like
story
if I
must be
had
really
that,
good.
yeah, if I had
Or
that formula, you guys couldn't afford me, is what I'm saying.
but
Yeah.
maybe that's what she does. Maybe she sings a Russian opera in the morning for the staff.
That's it.
got it.
And
Yeah,
they're all coming.
yeah, you'd be surprised how many people I asked, what's going to really help you be engaged? The answer was Russian opera.
I thought so.
So yeah, no, look, I guess I'll stick to my lane, right? I'll really kind of answer that through the lens of L&D, particularly because I think learning and development it's when you can attract people through saying this is the offering that we have in terms of your career trajectory and your development, that speaks to how we can impact talent acquisition. But when we undergo a period of consultation with people, my findings, and I've had a bit of a chat, this is really just in the last couple of months, I've been chatting to some colleagues in a similar field around what are the barriers, how impactful are we being. There's a really interesting trend that we've kind of anecdotally identified between a number of us, and it's quite frankly that the start of the magic formula is still going to be a blended learning approach, right? It was like that for it's been like that for 10 years or more. The blended learning approach of some face-to-face, some online, some self-guided, some self-paced, some experiential, that is still going to be the case as far as I can see, but we have to do better at being more impactful with the differences between those. I'll give you an example of, when COVID first hit and everybody was first doing training online, if they weren't doing bits of it beforehand, everything went online, of course. And it was almost a novelty at first for facilitators, for participants, to be like, you're going to ask me a question, I'll put it in the chat and I'll do a poll and I'll do all of these sorts of things. And it was all very, but now, I don't know. I mean, I ask you with the same level of transparency that I can say, even for myself, I can say that it's now often online trainings, virtual trainings can often just be another meeting, right? Another call we join, just another webinar. It can just be like a push of information, and trying to differentiate between, am I dialing into something that requires me to be fully present and active, or am I dialing into another thing that's just like having the telly on in the background? That's a real challenge now, because I think we as a population have lost some of our ability to focus.
Yes.
Who amongst us hasn't sat on a training or a webinar and checking notifications in the background, or just quickly knocking out a quick email that you think is really important? Like we do, right? Because we are trying to multitask and we're so used to this format. So I feel like something that's really important now is that when we are delivering things virtually, and we have to be inclusive of people in remote areas, that it needs to be, we need to set it up in a way that means that this still requires presence, this still requires engagement, this still requires it to be connected. But what I think the other thing is that we need to start reintroducing more face-to-face stuff. We simply do. The connection, I mean, our industry is about connecting people and culture and place. We have to be connecting with ourselves internally as a team as well. So we have to give people a reason to be in the office if we want them there. We have to give people a reason to have discussions and connect by putting them in the same room face to face. And again, that's something that time is so important for. It's forced interaction, like you must come together, you must interact, you've got to shake hands and look each other in the eye. And I just think that is a really important blend to anything we do in developmentally as well.
Yeah, I fully agree there. I just want to share my first poll that I was running online on a Zoom call. I remember, because when you just mentioned about the first time we had the poll, we had this for the development. It was actually a time function, I think the first virtual function. And I was so concerned because time always starts with the networking. Then we obviously go through the agenda of the evening and then back to networking. But we always have that point of contact before, and that's usually where the whole energy is born. So I was so afraid of having that virtual function and being the host of it, and just people show up and just, having their coffee, being half asleep, doing whatever they need to do. And that's why I introduced a poll and asked them some, random questions, such as, cat or dog, German or French. Everyone went for German, obviously for that one.
Obviously.
But dog, obviously, right? Cat and dog was a bit more split. And it kind of just initially had a kind of a bit of a feel, and everyone was still excited back in the days about a poll online. Yeah, that was that story. But you mentioned time, obviously, as one of the elements in the blend there. So I want to talk a bit more about that, especially for your company, within your company. What's the importance of time, and why has the company decided to be so supportive towards time as well?
Yeah, I think it's multifaceted from what I can see. And it was something I was introduced to very early in my tenure here. We are part of this, we're connected to this, this is the reason why. So it was definitely delivered to me when I began with the business that this is a partnership that we're committed to. But I would say that it's a multifaceted reason for why we have that connection. I think firstly, we have a responsibility as a business within the industry of the size and scope that we are. We have a responsibility to invest in talent externally within the industry, to be driving capability within the industry and connecting people in the industry, and not having that closed door approach. So I think there is a sense of industry responsibility that this is the right thing to do, to engage externally and to support people from that level. I think there's two sides to this as well, because I can probably tell you why we've been involved, but I can also give you insights into why we're still involved even this year, because things have shifted here at TTC. So last year I would have said, well, time really fills a niche for us. We didn't have an internal mentoring program within our global operation. And so obviously, if you're going to have a holistic learning and development program, you need everything. You need everything from digital learning to, standard instructional, direction to, and then there is a place for mentoring in that development kind of offering. And we didn't have that internally. So it was like, well, when someone is at that critical point in their career, when actually the reason, the real ticket for them is going to be that very, very bespoke individual relationship that mentoring offers. We didn't really have an internal platform for that to happen. So it was perfect for us. It gave us this niche, and it fulfilled our responsibility with the industry. And it gave, obviously, our participants in it all the benefits, which I'm sure we'll talk about, of time. But guys, now we do have an internal mentoring program at TTC globally that was launched here in Oceania in January. So we have that now internally. And so obviously the questions were, well, are we still connected to time? And it was the answer is absolutely yes, right? And the answer for that is diversity. You can't have an internal view. You can't, to do the right thing by your people, you have to cast the net wide, and you have to be really looking for different points of view, different perspectives, different information, and you cannot have a closed mind when you're doing that. So while we do have an internal mentoring program now, there's absolutely space for the diversity that an external program brings for our people as well. It's equally as valuable. It's kind of an extension of that.
Yeah, that's good.
I love to hear that. Can I just ask, in regards to the level that you consider for employees to be part of time? Would it be executive level, or is it entry level? Is it mid-management? Who's
it's a really good question
within your company?
Yeah, and I would the answer to that, and I often get asked that internally by candidates that are applying, because we have a process where they apply to us and we will select them to be part of it for us to sponsor them. The answer to that is that it's that the appropriateness of mentorship in my understanding and my estimation is not subject to title or function. It's whether or not at this particular point in your career, the mentoring offering is the right thing for your development. So, for example, this year we had, it's April and I'm still thinking about last year. Last year we had a number of people joining. One of our mentees was a contact center reservations agent who had just moved into a training role, so very much at the beginning of her career. But we also had a national key accounts manager who's extremely experienced in the industry, who both of them as mentees going into the relationship. And that assessment that we did was based on, well, what is it about right now in your career that means that this relationship is going to be instrumental? And I don't feel as though you can put a hierarchy on that, or you can put an organizational structure on that and say, unless you're at GM level or you're at this level. And on the other side, just because you're at GM level, does that mean you can't be a mentee anymore, right? Does that mean you can't be looking for partnership or looking to learn from somebody else? I would say that's pretty close-minded. So we don't really ever want to put any sort of limits on that. It's about that person, where they're at, and whether this is the right thing for you right now.
I think that your answer is actually really relevant, because there's probably a lot of people like that are going to listen to that episode that don't necessarily work for an organization the size of yours, right? Or
Right.
probably business owners that own a little shop and they probably have like 2 consultants working for them. And, I probably wonder if time would be of benefit to either employees or themselves, or like all these consultants that are working from home, and they're running their business on their own, and wondering also if this is something that will be relevant to them. I think that the answer that you've given as to what is the reasoning behind you sponsoring one of your employees to be like doing that mentorship program would probably be the same questioning that they need to have themselves in order to figure out that if it will be relevant for their employees or for themselves. So I think it's actually really, really important what you've highlighted there.
Yeah, I think sometimes I've been in organizations where being tapped on the shoulder and being invited to join a mentorship program it's sort of a badge of honor, and you sort of think, right, well, I must have reached a certain level of
Yes.
talent identification. And whereas I kind of rebel against that, and I think you can go and do a course if that's appropriate for you. You can invest into some industry networking if that's what's right for you right now. You can really line up with a direct line manager and say, right, I need absolute, like a coaching plan. There are so many ways to develop people and to help them with their careers. Mentoring really is only just one of them, but it's such a unique individual one because it purely is based on that connection between two individuals that are there to help each other. So it's not always the best thing in every moment for everyone. So we have to, I do think that you do have to remain open-minded about it and be real and really understand your reasons why to get the most out of it.
I think what's probably a bit different about time, it's not only the mentoring, obviously, we also have the networking component. We briefly mentioned that. Pardon me, but we also have the workshops, obviously, which get more and more popular as well now that we're back to in-person. And I believe, back to what we said before, for the blend, the in-person workshop always has, I think, a good outcome, and you have a really good takeaway key learning. The online version is always a bit, I don't know, I don't feel it as efficient. So, and I think that's really special about time coming back together regularly and doing that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just on the networking thing, I was speaking to somebody else last year about time and just saying, like, I don't think we can pretend that the last 3 years hasn't dulled some people's skills in terms of face-to-face communication, right? Like it's a lot of people haven't been able to have the opportunity to flex those muscles. If you are not someone who networks naturally, if it is something you have to kind of commit yourself to and be strategic about it, and you're not just naturally a social butterfly, then, and it's very important for the work you do, then you haven't really had a chance to practice for a long time. And that's quite frightening, and that's quite, really quite, intimidating, I think, for many people. But that's got nothing to do with their capabilities of what they're doing and nothing to do with their industry knowledge. It's just another skill, right? So I think that the opportunity and almost the expectation to network and to network well and to network in good faith through time is just, it's exceptional. It really is. It's putting the right amount of pressure on to help people step outside of that comfort zone. It's very, very, very supportive and very welcoming, but it's saying, hey, this is important and we need to get back to being able to do this and helping each other do it if it doesn't come easily to you.
And I think the network they're so supportive and, as you mentioned, and open. I'm also not a natural networker in a room where I don't know anyone. I'm okay if I know a couple and then I just have my security backup, my base, and I can just go out, that's fine. But if I don't know anyone, then that's probably most of us what they experienced at their very first contact with time. You might have known one person or no one. And that can be very scary in a room full of people that are sometimes very high profile even.
Absolutely.
But what I wanted to know from you, Mylinda, is there actually a special time moment that sticks to your heart and memory that you want to share?
Yeah,
to
there is
counterbalance
actually.
the cold Russian opera.
I feel like, were you recording earlier and you're going to give context to these gags, or are you just going to keep everyone thinking?
Oh, no, I mean, we're
no.
just going to encourage people to go and check out your LinkedIn page, which is what I've
do
done.
not.
Done
Oh,
a
that's
little bit
okay.
of stalking,
Like, don't be
you know,
trawling
like,
the don't be trawling the web for any old clips. Yeah, do you know what there is? And it's really it's interesting to think. Oh, do I have a fond memory of time? I'm so short in my my partnership or my connection with time. There's two things that stand out to me, and I think that we hosted an event here at Travel House in Bondi Junction in October of last year, and the first thing I was struck with is what we've just spoken about, just the really warm and welcoming nature of an event where you do have a lot of people from lots of different businesses, from competitors, coming together and having a bit of chat. And I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but I just sat back and was able to witness that. And I thought, this, I can hand on heart tell prospective mentees now that you're going to be fine. If the networking side of things is tricky for you or feels a little daunting, it won't be the minute you step into those rooms. And I thought you don't get that everywhere. That is not always the case with those events. So I thought that stood out to me. But really for me, this is going to sound really, really naff, but I'm absolutely telling the truth, is my fondest memory thus far is reading through the applications of our internal candidates who want to be a mentee in time, because the passion with which they represent themselves in these applications to say, this is what I'm trying to do, and this is what I've done, and this is where I feel my barriers are, and this is why I think this is going to help me. And time is very, very well respected as a program in the industry, but obviously within the Travel Corporation, it's a hotly contested, acknowledgement. And reading through those applications, and I read through those 4 or 5 months into my tenure, and I was like, wow, okay, the people in this industry or the people in the business I'm working for really care about what they're doing. They really care about their industry. They really care about the impact they make on their guests and that sort of thing. And I was like, okay, this is cool. I'm in the right place. People are passionate here. You're new to something yourself. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm digging it. These people, they really care about what they're doing. So that was exciting for me to read through why they wanted to be part of it as someone who was a relative outsider.
That's a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing that. I think we have to give some context about Russian opera.
Russian opera.
Of course, we spoke quite a bit about it, and I think we owe that to the listeners. So before we obviously started, I was very excited that I got all the technique working straight away, and then when we did a bit of a warm-up for the voice, Mylinda was sharing a little story, and maybe you want to give a very quick version again of the story, Mylinda, so people know why I'm constantly bringing up Russian opera.
Yeah, no, very quick top line version is I've undergone career change in my life. So prior to being in learning and development, I was a professional opera singer, as my husband was, and I was making a gag about the fact that if we couldn't get Arnaud's tech to work, then I could have a go at a French accent. But I thought my Russian accent would be better, because I've been known to forget the words in Russian opera and just kind of make Russianish sounds, which have actually been received quite well, but clearly by people who don't speak Russian.
Exactly.
Just put as many consonants as you can together and keep smiling is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Fake it till you make it, right?
Right. Yeah. I don't advocate that for most things, but if it's a language you don't speak, you've got to do something.
I tried the same with French, but no. Yep. It didn't go well.
Oh, well, I've heard you speak a little bit of French to me sometimes, so I'll...
That's just a couple of sentences that I've practiced before with my French-speaking staff to impress people.
There you go. But, hey, that's the most that I can hear. A lot of people who claim that they speak French fluently can actually do so. Good. Yeah. It's good, Timo. Like, don't feel bad. You're doing good.
Merci bien. Awesome, Mylinda, thank you so much for joining us today. We're already through this episode. Wow, it went super quick. Loved chatting with you.
Likewise.
Thank you. And Arnaud, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Well,
Can't wait
thank you for having me. And yeah, thank you, Mylinda, because I thought it was very insightful what you said. I'm really glad that we had the chance to chat with you. I think a lot of other people that are listening to this episode today will be able to sort of relate to some of the experience that you've been sharing. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. The power of mentoring is not to be underestimated, honestly. And I know even when we talk about time, predominantly about mentoring, as you say, it is one component of much more that's on offer. But I really, it cannot be underestimated. And I really, really encourage people to, if the moment is right for you in your career, it can be transformative. So don't hesitate, is what I would say.
Never hesitate.
Awesome.
Always be on the attack. Awesome. Thanks so much,
later.
guys. Talk soon.
Bye.